Inventory management, it's a common mistake made in business. And I'm going to show you the mistake itself and the solution. And to make it easy to understand, I'm using my GoVenture business simulation so you can see it in context of actually running a business. So I'm actually running a restaurant here. Let's take a look at my products. Oh, looks like we have some sales happening. Let's take a look at that. These are all my customers coming. This is my customer feedback. Let's slow that down. It's all happening a little bit too fast. All right, let's take a look at our products. I'm running a restaurant so you can see my various menu items. This restaurant happens to be similar to like McDonald's. So we've got a hamburger, French fries, and chicken nuggets and salad. And underneath I can see various metrics like the quality and price. I can click on any item like my hamburger and I can see the selling price and adjust it. But we're talking inventory here. So what I can also see is the ingredients to make that. So in order for me to sell a hamburger, I have to have all these inventory items. So just like in the real world, a restaurant or any business with inventory, it could be a company that's selling air conditioners, it has inventory. So you're keeping on hand a certain amount of raw materials or finished products, finished goods as they're called in business, and you're keeping them on hand so that you can serve your customers. And what you have to do as a business manager or owner or entrepreneur is you have to forecast how many products you think you're going to sell in the near future. Now, how far into the future you have to forecast depends on the type of business that you're running. So typically with food, you're forecasting a few days into the future, and food is really tough because your ingredients spoil or expire very quickly. So let's take a look at all our inventory here for our restaurant. So we've got hamburger meat and buns and bread and potatoes. And so there's a lot of inventory. The shelf life is not very long, compared to like an air conditioner, let's say, which, could last potentially years before that unit is upgraded. So depending on the type of business you have to forecast into the future, how many sales do I think I'm going to make based on how many customers you have? And then therefore, how much inventory do I need on hand to serve these customers? And so in the case of a restaurant, if you don't have enough inventory and you run out, which can happen here when we were seeing our customers kind of fly through here a moment ago, what happens is the customer might order something else. So they come in, they'll order a hamburger. You don't have the ingredients to make a hamburger. You tell the customer, hey, I don't have any hamburgers. They might get a little upset, might get disgruntled. They might leave. So, why? I can't believe a hamburger restaurant doesn't have hamburgers. See you later. I'm out of here. Or they might be okay with ordering something else. All right, I'll get a chicken burger instead, or whatever, salad or something. Now, if you're selling air conditioners and that's all you're selling and you don't have an air conditioner, they might walk out and go somewhere else to buy one if that's the case. So you have to consider what are the consequences of not having enough inventory. So if you don't forecast correctly and you don't order enough inventory and you run out, you're going to have potentially unhappy customers. You're going to lose a customer who doesn't want to wait or would prefer to go somewhere else. So you're losing your customer to a competitor. You may never see that customer again. So if it's an air conditioner, maybe they're only going to buy once and you'll never see that customer again. If it's a restaurant, if you're lucky, maybe they'll come back. Maybe. Or not. Maybe they'll go somewhere else and find a better hamburger and keep going to that place. So there are a lot of missed sales here. We call them missed sales if you don't order enough inventory. Now, there's also consequence to ordering too much inventory. Let's go back to our products. Let's go back to our inventory. So what happens in my restaurant if I order too much hamburger meat, too many buns, too many potatoes, and they sit unsold for several days? Well, what happens is they spoil or expire. And of course, you don't want to serve those to customers because now you're giving them a poor quality product and potentially a health hazard too, which is even more serious. So you have to throw that food away. So there are consequences to ordering too much inventory in that your inventory might spoil or expire. Now, you may say in the air conditioner example, I can hold that inventory for a long time because the air conditioner may not be upgraded in a while. But what if it's an electronic, like a phone or a computer, which are constantly being upgraded and the shelf life is very short? Now, the computer may not expire, the air conditioner may not expire, but if there's a new model out there and customers prefer a new model, now you have to discount the old model, try to sell it through. So you're losing potential revenue. In the case of a business, you're losing the inventory because it's spoiling. You have to throw it away. You also have this issue of what's called carrying costs. So when you buy inventory, you're paying, in a lot of cases, you might be paying cash for it. Now, sometimes you might get it on credit, but temporarily, often the credit is only short term. So what ends up happening is you end up putting out cash, paying money, real money, to carry this inventory. And your money is tied up in this inventory. And oh, look at this, our employee didn't show up for work. That's going to be another problem I'm going to do a video on. So now your cash is tied up, and maybe you need that cash flow to pay your bills, but your cash is tied up in your inventory. And what are you going to do? Well, you're going to discount and do a sale and maybe try to get that cash back. I mean, you can do that, but it's much more efficient if you can forecast better. And really, that's what it comes down to. So inventory management is a real difficult challenge with any business because you have to. Any business that has inventory, not all businesses do. Software, for example, doesn't have inventory. Digital goods typically don't have inventory, and that's one of the benefits of those businesses. But when you have an inventory management problem, you're basically, if you order too much, you're tying up your cash flow, you're potentially spoiling or expiring, may have to discount. If you don't order enough, you lose sales, lose customers, maybe they never come back. So that's the seriousness of the problem. And the only solution to this problem is to forecast better. So how do you forecast better? Well, you go to your reports and you try to look at things like your income statement to see what kind of sales you're having over a certain period of time. So if you typically have to buy inventory, like for a restaurant, you might have to buy it, order it, a few days in advance, maybe a week in advance. Then you forecast out, well, how much sales did I have last week? How many sales did I have in the same week last year? And it's also important to do that, to compare your upcoming week to previous years, months, quarters, because sometimes the calendar date affects sales. For example, we all know that during December, November, there's a lot of sales happening in a lot of businesses because of the holidays, Christmas and Hanukkah and so on. So a lot of gift buying and so on. So you got to compare, and when you're forecasting, not just a random week or month forward, you got to look back to your previous, most recent time period, and then also look back to other previous time periods that might have similar conditions. And you consider about your business, what type of business does the weather have effect on when people buy and how much they buy? For example, if you're selling generators, well, generators might get sold more commonly when there's bad weather and people are losing their power. So when does bad weather happen in your region of the world? Is it in the summer when it's tornadoes and hurricanes, or is it in winter when there's ice storms? So these are kinds of things you have to consider, and that's how you solve the problem of inventory, is better forecasting. So use as many reports and as much data as possible. I can look at things like my customer feedback and anything else I can get access to in my business. And if you don't have this data, then this is what you need to start collecting if inventory management is a problem in your business. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully this was useful to you. Again, I'm using a problem and a solution, and I'm playing a business simulation called GoVenture to demonstrate this in context of a real business. I'm going to share other problems and solutions using the same methodology. I'm Mathew Giorgio.